Dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening and welcome to Newslink on West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Burkina Faso confirms extradition of Paul Henry Damiba, who faces multiple charges. Bandits adopt over 200 Christian worshippers in northwestern Nigeria.
Over 200 people they took. They now allowed the elderly, the old ones, and then those who are nursing children to go back.
Human Rights Commission in Togo strengthens efforts towards forensic investigation.
Any event involving a person that gives rise to conflict obviously requires investigation to understand the situation and establish the facts.
And Guinean civil society calls for release of political prisoners. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is Augustine Bill Coley.
Many thanks for staying with us. Newslink kicks off in the central Sahel region, precisely in Burkina Faso, where the authorities have confirmed the extradition of Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba. The former transitional president was extradited on January 17. He has been prosecuted for offenses against state security, embezzlement of public funds, and incitement to money laundering. In a statement, Burkinabe Minister of Justice Dasso Rodrigue Bayala commended Togo's judicial cooperation in the execution of the international arrest warrant issued on January 6, 2026. Elsewhere in Nigeria, more than 170 Christian worshippers were adopted in Kaduna State, northwest of the country. According to police authorities, the adoption took place on Sunday in the Komin Wali community within Kajuru local government area of the state. This follows days of uncertainty and conflicting reports emerging from the area. WADR's correspondent Yechenu Sasetu reports.
The Nigeria Police Force explained that earlier comments by the Kaduna State Commissioner of Police, Rabiu Muhammad, were intended to prevent public panic while investigations and confirmations were ongoing. However, subsequent checks by operational units and intelligence sources now confirmed that an abduction did occur in the community. Press officer of Christian Solidarity Worldwide Nigeria, Ruben Buhari, said efforts to obtain first-hand accounts from residents were unsuccessful as community members claimed they had been instructed to remain silent. He added that the attackers reportedly struck while church services were ongoing.
Over 200 people they took. They now allowed the elderly, the old ones, and then those who are nursing children to go back. About 11 people were able to escape too, and then they left. So right now we have 177 people who are in the bush.
Reacting to the incident, Chairman of the Northern Christian Association of Nigeria, CAN, Joseph Hayab, warns against politicizing security challenges, stressing that the protection of lives should remain the top priority.
The politics that the people bring into security is what is hindering effective action. Can we stop it and allow and tell our security to be accountable and go out there and just bring our people back? Look at the time they were using in denial. That time they're supposed to be using pursuing the bandits.
Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetakun, has ordered the deployment of critical operational and intelligence assets to Kajuru and surrounding communities to address the situation. For WADR, Yechinu Sasetu reporting.
Concerning judicial matters, the Gambian government has selected potential appointees, including a British consul for its newly established Special Prosecutor's Office. This legal official is responsible for prosecuting crimes committed during the 22-year rule of former President Yahya Jammeh. In a recent interview with local media, the government spokesperson, Briman Sankara, explained that the prosecutor's office will handle cases that may involve international considerations requiring a wide range of legal expertise. WADR Sandona Mendy reports.
According to Sankare, the special prosecutor will lead investigations and coordinated prosecutions before the Special Criminal Court, which has been established to address alleged human rights violations from the Jammeh era. He knows that such cases are inherently complex and that the legal process is expected to take considerable time. This announcement has been welcomed by victims of the Jammeh regime, who emphasize that the priority now is to ensure that justice is served.
Truly, what matters to us really is somebody who can do the job and who can do it well, and who can do it in a way that it brings about the satisfaction that the victims are looking for.
The nationality of the personnel does not really matter, because the nature of the tribunals invites all qualified personnel to part of the process, so that we can have an impartial judicial process, that all parties that are subject matter to the crimes that are before the courts can have fair trial.
Meanwhile, legal experts suggest that the appointment of an international prosecutor could enhance credibility, independence, and public confidence in the proceedings. Lamin Kamara, a legal expert, supports this view.
Gambia is a very small country. Everybody is related to everybody else. And because of perhaps the pervasive nature of the Jammeh-era atrocities that were committed, appointing a Gambian prosecutor could have some implications of bias and conflicts of interest.
The Special Criminal Court is part of the government's efforts to implement recommendations of the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission, TRRC. Between 2018 and 2021, the TRRC documented hundreds of alleged abuses during Jammeh's rule, including unlawful killings, torture, enforced disappearances, sexual violence, and arbitrary detention. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Why in Togo, the National Human Rights Commission is enhancing its technical skills to investigate allegations of torture and death. Since Tuesday, the Commission staff and officials have been participating in a capacity-building training focused on forensic investigation in the capital, Lomé. The goal of this training is to equip the commissioners with both practical and theoretical knowledge to improve the documentation of violations, strengthen their investigations, and enhance advocacy with authorities and partners. Imo Edit completes the story.
The National Human Rights Commission is enhancing its efforts to promote and protect human rights in Togo through this training initiative. This comes at a time when numerous cases of alleged serious human rights violations are being reported. According to organizers of the meeting, forensic examination is essential for uncovering the truth and strengthening investigations. Kwa Ohini Sanve is president of the commission.
In the event of a death in custody or elsewhere, we need to understand the cause and circumstances of death. For this, we inevitably need to call upon a healthcare professional, namely the forensic pathologist, who must be able to do so. This allows us to uncover the truth, since everything we do must lead to the revelation of the truth, so that the work we do is more reliable and credible.
Additionally, professionals in the field emphasize that forensic investigation is vital for safeguarding human rights and ensuring access to justice. Lieutenant Colonel Yao Apelete Agboli, a forensic pathologist, supports this perspective.
Any event involving a person that gives rise to conflict obviously requires investigation to understand the situation and establish the facts. The aim is to understand the discipline and how this specialty can contribute to the success of their mission.
Through this initiative, the National Human Rights Commission is taking an important step towards documenting human rights violations and facilitating more effective access to justice for victims in Togo.
Imo Edit with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
And now to Guinea, where civil society organizations and political actors are voicing several demands. They are particularly calling for the release of political prisoners, the return of critical individuals in exile, and respect for civil liabilities in the country. These demands follow the recent inauguration of the transitional president, General Mamadi Doumbouya. Abdullahi Hassan gives us the details.
The latest statement from socio-political organizations comes as President Mamadi Doumbouya continues to call for national unity. Political leaders emphasize the necessity of establishing an inclusive dialogue framework to outline the procedures for organizing the upcoming legislative elections. Civil society, for its part, prioritizes the protection of rights and freedoms. It advocates for the release of political prisoners and the return of socio-political actors currently in exile. Gabriel Haba, president of the National Council of Guinean Civil Society Organizations, voices these concerns.
This is not a time for triumphalism. It is a time for rallying our energies and involving all the nation's forces in national development. All Guineans must now feel invested in our country's development process. We urge the head of state to release all prisoners, all those whose rights have been violated. This would send a powerful message to the nation, a message of unity, a message of reconciliation.
In recent years, both national and international observers have consistently condemned the restrictions on civil liberties since the military took power. The president of the National Council of Civil Society urges the head of state to ensure the respect of these liberties throughout his term.
We support the head of state in effectively upholding the laws of the Republic, promoting public freedom, and protecting fundamental rights. It is in this way that he will honorably leave his mark on the people of Guinea who have placed their trust in him.
However, some sources indicate that Aliyu Ba, leader of the Model Party who was recently sentenced to 2 years in prison for insulting the president, may soon receive a presidential pardon.
A report from Chano Alpha Ibrahim Mbalde in Conakry, presented by Abdoulaye Hassan. In Cote d'Ivoire, the government is allocating 280 billion CFA francs to purchase unsold cocoa. Ivorian producers have been facing difficulties in selling their products for several months. More than 100,000 tons are currently sitting idle in the production areas. Christopher Aticho tells us more.
According to the Minister of Agriculture, Kwabena Kwesi Ajomani, approximately 123,000 tons of cocoa are currently held up in production areas, with a particularly high concentration in Duekwe region in the west of the country. This stems from both logistical and port constraints, but above all from the sharp drop in global cocoa prices, which has fallen by nearly 30% since September 2025, while the farm gate price has been maintained at 2,800 CFA francs per kilogram for the 2025-2026 main crop year. Through advanced sales, the decline in international prices has significantly slowed purchases, causing a backlog at the farm gate. To address this crisis, the government, in consultation with the Coffee and Cocoa Council and the Interprofessional Agricultural Organization, has approved an emergency plan for the immediate removal of stocks, estimated at 280 billion CFA francs. This plan, explained by Minister Ajomane, will be implemented throughout the farming season to restore the smooth flow of purchases. He says the government will rely on structured national operators in conjunction with processors and exporters, while strengthening border controls to counter cross-border flows. Through this exceptional measure, the authorities intend not only to permanently decongest production areas, but above all, to protect farmers' income. The Ivorian Agriculture Minister maintains that this move sends a strong signal to the entire cocoa sector, as the first removal operations are expected to begin in the coming days.
A report from Marcel Ariston Blade in Abidjan, voiced by Christopher Aticho. Away from Cote d'Ivoire, economic growth in sub-Saharan Africa appears promising, with a projected rate exceeding 4% for 2026. This figure is reflected in the UN's report Outlook 2026 titled World Economic Situation. Usma Uma explains the details.
According to a report published by the International Monetary Fund, IMF, Africa's economic growth, which was 3.9% in 2025, is expected to increase to over 4.6% in both 2026 and 2027. The IMF notes this growth in a context of global uncertainty. Among the region's major economies, Nigeria is projected to grow by 4.4% in 2026 and by 4.1% in 2027. In contrast, South Africa anticipates an expansion of 1.4% in 2026 and 1.5% in 2027. The report highlights that the stabilization of the macroeconomic situation and reform measures implemented in several countries are the primary drivers of this positive momentum. Another encouraging piece of news for African economies is that inflation is expected to slow in the coming years. However, the region still faces several challenges, with the IMF specifically mentioning a reduction in foreign aid. To maximize the continent's economic potential, the UN recommends that African countries pursue structural reforms, particularly those targeting labor markets, education, and regulatory frameworks. The IMF also emphasizes the importance of maintaining fiscal discipline while investing in infrastructure and human capital.
Usma Omar reporting there. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Burkina Faso confirms extradition of Paul Henry Damiba, who faces multiple charges. Bandits adopt over 200 Christian worshippers in northwestern Nigeria. Human Rights Commission in Togo strengthens efforts towards forensic investigation. And Guinean civil society calls for release of political prisoners. Still ahead in the news, we have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Thanks for being with us. Don't forget, we are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Here in Senegal, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has honored the national team players who are champions of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. The ceremony took place at the Presidential Palace on Tuesday night following a victory parade in Dakar. During the event, President Diomaye Faye pledged 75 million CFA francs and a plot of land for each member of the national football team. Sankule Janko reports.
The moment was marked by applause and pride as Senegal celebrated another major success on the continental stage. President Diomaye Faye congratulated the players for their hard work, discipline and determination. He pledged about 70 million CFA francs and a plot of land to each player for their efforts.
I
would like to take this opportunity to inform the Senegalese people that on their behalf and in my own name, I have given each member of the Lion delegation present here 75 million CFA francs, 1,500 square meters on the Petite Côte to the members of the Federation, 1,000 square meters and 50 million CFA francs.
The presidential treat late Tuesday followed a long day of celebration in Dakar. Earlier, the champions paraded through the city in an open-top bus, displaying the trophy to cheering crowds. Thousands of supporters lined the streets, waving flags, singing and chanting in joy.
As a Senegalese, I'm very proud. I'm very proud. I can't tell you, I don't have the word to tell you how I'm happy today.
We will never forget this day because this means a lot. You see all the population, they are here. Our mothers, our grandfathers, our little boys, they're all here.
While the celebrations were joyful, they were also emotional. Supporters expressed their sadness as the tournament marked the last Africa Cup of Nations appearance for star player Sadio Mane.
We are sad. We don't want him to go. We still need him because Sadio Mane means something in this group. He will motivate the young generation. The world still needs Sadio Mane.
As night fell in Dakar, the celebrations continued, blending happiness with reflection. Senegal celebrates a major victory, honors its champions, and bids farewell to a football icon who has left a lasting legacy.
Thanks to Sankule Janko for that report.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is a guest.
Well, our guest this evening is Councillor Saliu Tal, former president of the Gambia Bar Association. He provides a legal analysis of the ongoing move by the government to appoint a counsel for the Special Prosecutor's Office. The selected prosecutor will be tasked with investigating and prosecuting cases relating to crimes committed during former President Jammeh's 22-year rule. In this context, Councillor Tal weighs in on the matter.
as president of the bar and past president of the bar, I was a member of the ECOWAS Gambia Technical Committee that advised the government on the establishment of the Office of the Special Prosecutor and what they call a special accountability mechanism, which constitutes a hybrid court and domestic court. Some of the crimes that alleged to have been committed by the former president and his enablers have both domestic and international elements. So for that reason, the special prosecutor has to be somebody who has experience and capacity to deal with not only domestic crimes but international crimes. So if you look at the Act, it does not prohibit the appointment of non-Gambians, but gives preference to Gambians who have those skills and experience. So there's national ownership, so the preference is for Gambian candidates, but any other person who has demonstrated specialized experience, knowledge, and capacity can actually hold the post, including a British or American national for that matter. But it is not unusual to have a special prosecutor who's a non-national to actually prosecute crimes, international and domestic crimes, in the transnational justice environment.
How might international law and cross-border jurisdiction affect the prosecution of crimes committed, especially during the Yahya Jammeh's regime, if suspects or evidence are located outside of the Gambia?
No, when you talk about international crimes, you talk about certain crimes that are designated as so serious that it offends humanity. Things like torture, enforced disappearances, sexual and gender-based violence, crimes against humanity. It doesn't matter where you commit it, it's called international crime. It cuts across all jurisdictions. So some of those crimes were alleged to have been committed in Gambia. For that reason, and Gambian law it's not adequate to deal with those crimes because we don't have them in our law books. That's why the court was designed and the process was designed to enable the Gambia government with the support of ECOWAS. You have to remember that ECOWAS agreed to establish a special court of the Gambia, just like the one that was established in Sierra Leone. There's one that's created by addition of ECOWAS heads of state in the Gambia. And there's also a domestic element of the court. So the aspect of international crimes will be prosecuted in that internationalized tribunal based in the Gambia using international crimes, criminal law, not Gambian domestic law, international criminal law and Gambian domestic law.
What factors will determine whether the Gambia's Special Prosecutor's Office succeeds in delivering credible and lasting justice for the Gambian people?
First of all, the selection process. Let's start with the enactment of the Act. It was a multi-stakeholder approach. It involved the Gambia government, of course, involved the Bar Association, involved civil society, involved victim-led organization, in National Assembly. So involved multi-stakeholders all invested in ensuring that we have a justice process that is open, participatory, and transparent from the consultative stage to the enactment of the Act. And within the Act, the appointment process is of very, very high standard. You have an independent selection panel of very eminent Gambians and international renowned scholars and practitioners of global repute with a very well-defined criteria as to who should appoint. I mean, what is it sets out the criteria of appointment, the qualification, the experience, and the guiding principles to ensure that the process is very transparent, is open, and whoever's appointed would meet the requirements to be able to discharge that office and duty independently, without fair or favor, based on acceptable international law.
Councillor Saliu Tal is the former president of the Gambia's Bar Association. Now in the sporting world, CAF has sanctioned the Algerian Football Federation with a total fine of $100,000 after Algeria's 2-0 quarterfinal loss to Nigeria at the 2025 AFCON. This record penalty punishes a series of incidents ranging from aggressive behavior by players and officials after the final whistle to disturbances in the stands, including the use of smoke bombs and reported assaults in the press area. On an individual level, defender Rafeg Bagali received a 4-match suspension, 2 of which were suspended, thus ruling him out of the start of the 2027 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying campaign. CAF also sanctioned goalkeeper Lucas Sidanin with a 2-match suspension to be served during the 2027 AFCON qualifiers. Through these decisions, the Continental Body is reaffirming its zero-tolerance policy towards indiscipline and safety breaches, sending a clear warning about the professionalism expected in major African competitions. Meanwhile, UEFA Champions League comes alive tonight. Right now, Spanish Atletico Madrid is battling Galatasaray of Turkey, and the scoreline is 1-1. Entering Frankfurt of Germany is taking on Karabakh, and the scoreline is 1-1. Later tonight, Athletic Club will face Atalanta. Bayern Munich will take on Juventus Galaxy. Chelsea will battle Buffons. Juventus will take on Benfica. Marseille will take on Liverpool. Newcastle will battle PSV Eindhoven, and FC Barcelona will take on Slavia Prague. That's the latest in the world of sports. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Maudoju for the technical support. Interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English Service. I am Augustine Curley. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all